it a hassle to ship your parcel overseas? Wouldn't it be great if you didn't need to travel to the drop-off point or could avoid filling out lengthy consignment notes? With DHL on the go, you can now send parcels or documents easily. Tell us your shipping details and let our chatbot guide you the rest of the way. Make payment through a secure payment gateway. Arrange a pickup at your preferred location. All of this is done via WhatsApp from your home, office, or anywhere, at any time. Scan the QR code or WhatsApp us now. Ready, chat, go! With DHL on the go. Finding it a hassle to ship your parcel overseas? Wouldn't it be great if you didn't need to travel to the drop-off point or could avoid filling out lengthy consignment notes? With DHL on the go, you can now send parcels or documents easily. Tell us your shipping details and let our chatbot guide you the rest of the way. Make payment through a secure payment gateway. Arrange a pickup at your preferred location. All of this is done via WhatsApp from your home, office, or anywhere, at any time. Scan the QR code or WhatsApp us now. Ready, chat, go! With DHL on the go.
everyone, a very good morning to all of you, and welcome back to day 4 of the Digital X Data 2020 live virtual conference. We hope that you have enjoyed the Business 2021 Power Panel and both the retail and manufacturing tracks yesterday. If this is your first session, and whether you are currently watching this on WebEx, Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, thank you very much for joining us. Once again, my name is Myra from Star Media Group's award-winning Rage Investigative Journalism team. I'm your host for this 4-day live virtual conference. All right, guys, before we begin, we want to announce the special prize draw winners of yesterday's session. Yes, you heard it right. For those who have just joined us, all you need to do is stay with us till the end of each session and you will stand a chance to win these exciting prizes. So let's see who are the winners of yesterday's sessions. For the Philips Bluetooth wireless headphones, the winners are Sivakami Cassandra and Zulfa Sulaiman. For the winners of the Skull Candy wireless headphones, it's Ezadin Mat Awan and Norshikin Harizan. And for the Honor Band 5 Sports Edition, we have Darren Key and Ong Si Chang. Congratulations to all the winners. Our events crew will be contacting you separately at the end of the event at your registered email address or mobile number for the arrangement. All right, I'm sure you're as excited as I am to kick off the conference. Just a few housekeeping matters before we begin. Please be patient if you experience any technical or internet glitches. This is a live online event and everyone dials in from different internet bandwidths and devices. For WebEx participants, your microphone and webcam are turned off by default, but do feel free to chat with our events crew directly if you need any assistance. You can also email us at events@thestar.com.my. Lastly, and most importantly, please engage, learn, and enjoy. To learn more about the conference programs and speakers profile, please scan the QR code on the top right of your screen or go to bit.ly/dxdagenda. Ladies and gentlemen, with our current ignorance and short-term vision, the future generations will shoulder much of the long-term economic and social consequences. Youth empowerment is a shared responsibility. We are humbled and honored to have a powerful panel lineup of speakers who will examine the identities the seniors play as exemplary role models in this digital age, and the importance of continuous development of digital competencies while involving digital savvy youths in building societal resilience in today's complex, interdependent world. These are the issues we will be addressing today in our Empowering Future Ready Youth Power Panel. And our first guest panelist is Jeff Sandhu, who is currently the head of Future X Talent of Sunway iLabs. And Jeff believes that there is a strong need to innovate the way that we learn with the rise of technology. Our second guest is Nur Kira Yusri, who is the co-founder and education director of Undi 18, a Malaysian grassroots movement that successfully lobbied the Malaysian government to reduce the minimum voting age from 21 to 18 years old. Our third guest is Vice President at MDEC, who is in charge of digital talent development. Dr. Sumitra Nair's mandate is to work with like-minded ecosystem partners to build a sustainable and quality talent pool for digital technology sectors. To date, her work has impacted more than 1 million Malaysians. We have a special guest who is joining this power panel. He is Shahrial Azwar Jimin. He is Shahrial Azwar Jimin, the CEO of Maybank Foundation. In his role, Shahrial has the opportunity to work with various communities in areas off the beaten tracks across Southeast Asia. And moderating the panel is Ganeshwaran Khanna, a business journalist of Star Media Group. This is a very youthful, and it already sounds like it's going to be an exciting panel. The panel are getting ready, so please do stay tuned. We will be back in just a short while.
other online. And thank you for being with us today at the grand finale of Star Media Group's Digital and Data Virtual Conference. I am Ganeshwaran Khanna, and I will be moderating this youthful panel today on a topic that I think which is very pertinent and interesting, which is on the youths of Malaysia and their future readiness in being digitally competent and also being competitive across the world of youth similar age. So together with me today, we have four interesting speakers with diverse backgrounds. So I'll just give you a short introduction of them. On my right is Mr. Sharil from Maybank Foundation. He is the CEO. And next to him is Dr. Sumitra Nair from MDEC and digital talent. And next is Mr. Jeff Sandu. He is from Sunway iLabs. He's the head of Future X Talent. And last but not the least, we have the youthful Nurkira Yusri from Undi 18. She is the co-founder, and she is also currently the education director of Undi 18. So before we kickstart the discussion, I think I would give a brief thoughts of myself on the topic today, which is the youths of Malaysia and their future, facing the future. I mean, over the last 10 years, we have seen technological development and accessibility faster space than what we have seen over the last 5 decades. And children and youth Facebook, Instagram, all other platforms. And we are also seeing the youths starting up their own businesses as early as 15 years old. And I have bought handicrafts from a youth, from a teenager, 14 or 15, from Instagram. So that is the kind of development that we are seeing in Malaysia as we are speaking. But at the same time, what we are seeing is that based on an answer provided by the ministry in Parliament, over 30% of school-going children today do not have adequate gadgets to do their study at home and during this new norms times. And at the same time, you also hear criticisms from many people saying that Malaysian youths, when compared to other youths in the region, especially those in India and China, Japan, South Korea, we lag behind in terms of our digital competency. So there are two sides of the coin, and we hope that our lineup of panelists today will be able to share their insights and what do they think about how we can change this readiness of youths so that a baby born today will be future ready over the next 15 or 18 years. So just to kickstart the discussion, maybe we can go from Mr. Sharil. Where do you think Malaysian youths stand today in terms of their digital competency? Do you think they are ready to embrace the future? Do you think that they can go into the gig economy? Are they ready? And do they lag behind when compared to youths in other regional countries?
Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you to the Star Media Group for inviting me, and thank you for taking away 10 years of my age. We part of this panel. It is very interesting times that we live in today, and your question is very pertinent. Having said that, a lot has happened over the last few months, just this year alone, which has made center stage the issue of the digital divide, the access, the digital haves and the have-nots, right? But if your question is from a regional perspective, given the work that we do, given the work that Maybank Foundation does throughout the ASEAN countries, given the fact that Maybank is present in all the 10 ASEAN countries, I would say that the situation is not too bad. Yeah, if you're asking from a regional perspective, I've seen the youth in other countries in Southeast Asia, in Laos, in Myanmar, in Cambodia. So in terms of positioning, in terms of the digital awareness, in terms of digital literacy, I would say that we're not too bad. Of course, we lag behind some of the other countries. And knowing that you should not take presence on social media as a pure proxy, you should be looking at other things as well. But it's not too bad. And we know, for example, because we have developed technology areas related to banking. For example, one is our May application, Maybank Anytime, Every Time. And we've seen huge numbers of users, more than 1.7 million already signed up. And these are principally young people who adopt a lifestyle approach to finances rather than, the more traditional people on even Maybank to you just 10 years ago. Yeah.
Right. Can we then have the opinion from Dr. Sumitra?
Sure. Thank you, Ganesh, for the question. I think it's a very relevant question to ask. At the same time, I don't think it may not be the most important question, right? Because throughout history, there have been many industrial revolutions. Of course, this one is faster, perhaps. In speed of change, it's faster. But humankind has had exposure to life-changing type of technologies in the past. If you think about it, fire was a life-changing form of technology, right? Back then, the weaving machine, steam engine, you can go on. Digital is the same, and it's probably not going to be the last. It's there's probably going to be other life-changing technologies, things that you're going to have to face. And so therefore, I don't think while digital competency is extremely important, it's not the most important. I think what is most important is having the right mindset, growth mindset, to keep learning and to keep growing, right? And to keep adapting. That is what has sustained humankind through the ages, the ability to adapt and to thrive. And to do that, you need resilience, right? And I think that's what we need to focus on. If you ask me about digital competency specifically, like Sharel, I don't think we're too bad off. At least from the work that we've done, we've touched through the work we've done, at least in the space impacting school children, we've touched more than 1.6 million school children around the country. And they come from all over the place, from as far up as Perlis, down to even some of the Felda communities down south. In Sabah, we've gone into rural areas like Tenom, Kudat, even Sarawak, Cebu and places like that. We see there are children who are able to adapt and who are able to embrace these technologies. And I don't think it's not about whether we teach them coding. Yes, coding is important, and that's competency. But more important is, do they have these qualities of being curious? Are they empathetic? Do they have the right value system to solve problems, to identify problems, and make use of whatever they have around them, right? Whether it is digital or whether it is, wood or natural resources, whatever they have, they need to use that to solve problems. That's what we need. There, I think we can do better, with regards to nurturing children who are more resilient, youths who are more resilient, and who are more empathetic, and who have a problem-solving mindset and a growth mindset. There, I feel that perhaps we may not be where ideally we should be. How do we compare with other countries? It's hard to say. Of course, if you take countries where it's a little bit hard, survival is a little bit harder. India, less developed countries, perhaps youths there naturally have had to become more resilient. We in Malaysia, we are quite blessed. We generally, many youth have a safety net, right? Not all, but many of them have a safety net in the form of their parents, who are still able to support them, whether or not they have the right kind of skills. And so there, I think we can do better. But I wouldn't sort of put us down as far as digital competency are concerned. We've got many of them, and I think Star has also covered many of them, the ninjas and digital ninjas. Many of them have won competitions globally, so they're already there. Even the world skills competition, the drone competition, the drones category, a Malaysian student from Negeri Sembilan he won the gold medal, right? So I wouldn't put us down in digital competency, but the other areas which are more important, I think that's where we should focus.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Sumitra. Let's move on to Mr. Jeff. Dr. Sumitra just now pointed out it's important to have that growth mindset, the curiosity. It's more important to create curiosity among school-going children and youths. So maybe you can also touch on that.
Yeah, so thanks Ganesh and also the staff for hosting. It's a week long, it's a very important topic as well. So, right. So I think we love, as Malaysians, we love to compare. So we like to look at the neighbors down south, we like to look at some of the emerging countries. And the problem with comparison is that we like to look at some of the best output from those countries and compare it with some of the worst that we are seeing in the media itself, right? So that's the issue when we have with comparison. But I echo what Sharil and Dr. Sumitra has been saying. I think we do have great talents. Just recently, I think we had a young Malaysian boy who won a NASA competition, right? So that's a success story right there itself. And he's young, if I'm not mistaken, he's 9 years old, or something like that. So I think what we have seen throughout the years, and I know Kira, my next panelist here, will mention this, is that we're very hungry. The digital divide is true, it's there. We have areas that are, mostly connected with 4G, probably 5G in the next coming years. And then there are areas where it's struggling to get Wi-Fi. People will have to go up to, certain mountains and trees to actually sort of like get connection and stuff, right? So there is a gap, there is that divide. But that happens throughout every other country as well. We are not just unique that we have this problem. Every other country has this problem. But what we are seeing, especially, so, I run 42KL, which is a school. And what we have seen is actually people are hungry for these things, right? And this is not something new because we've seen with this technology shift, right? So with the dawn of YouTube and LinkedIn learnings and all this kind of Coursera, MDEC has provided various different types of courses. The take-up has been really good. YouTube, people are going on YouTube, learning about things that they're passionate about and then making a change, right? So you mentioned about, I think Cheryl was mentioning going on Instagram, or I think Ganesh, you were mentioning going on Instagram, buying off things from individuals who you then realize are actually, 15, 16 years old, actually running an Instagram store. How did they do this? It's because they were just passionate about certain things and they were provided with that opportunity through these various different platforms, right? So what we need to do is how do we feed this hunger that individuals have. It's going back to that curiosity, right? We do see that Malaysians have that passion of doing things to make a change, but we need to enable that to happen, and that is by providing them with better connection and better sort of devices, platforms, making it accessible to more people. But that's not to say that by just doing that, we can then sit back and let people sort of jump into it. It's a lot of work to be done still, but the first step, and we're on the way there, right? So I do feel that I think we probably shouldn't really compare much. If the question is, are we hungry enough? I would just say, yeah, we're definitely hungry to actually succeed in this revolution. And COVID-19 has actually brought on to this urge, right? You've seen a lot of companies. Large companies actually now making that shift, and it's actually driven by the youth, right? The younger workforce who are actually going up to their senior management to actually say that this is how you can actually implement certain things in a digital platform, right? And that's an encouraging sign that they are now having their voices heard in the senior management of businesses and stuff, right? So I feel like we are definitely hungry, and I'm excited to see in the next coming years to see where Malaysia can actually the young talents that we have, and with the great work that MDEC and everyone else is doing, to see actually there are more great success stories, because there are already a lot. Let's not try to forget those success stories.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. One interesting point I noted from Jeff's sharing just now was the disparity on access to technology, and that how that affects youth empowerment and digital competency in Malaysia. We will get to that on our next question, but let's go to, I would love to hear from Nokira on your take on this. I believe you have worked with, you being a youth yourself, and you have worked with a lot of youths, especially those kids from schools. How do you see this? What is your take on this?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again here today. I think when it comes to comparisons, which is what have people been doing or not been doing, I think you need to compare, instead of just Malaysia to other regions, but can we look within our own country, right? Can we look at kids living in KL and kids living in a PPR in KL and then kids living in a rural area in Sabah or Sarawak? The disparity is very clear. It has been raised in media, it has been raised by the kids themselves on social media, it has also been raised by politicians in parliament, whether they are taking it seriously or not. Both of those points have been raised as well. I think recently the CEO of Teach for Malaysia, Sun Seng, in a recent interview, he mentioned that when a kid, and we're talking about children below 18 years old here, when they miss out on at least 2 or 3 months of formal education, studies show that it will translate to being at least 2-3 years behind compared to our peers, right? So for example, my sister right now, who is in university, thank goodness, so she can sort of pivot to the online digital learning because she has the privilege to own a laptop, she has the privilege to be near strong internet and to also be able to work a part-time job doing that. But for so many Malaysians and so many young Malaysians, this is not the reality. At the moment, even before COVID-19, only 15% of Malaysians are able to achieve tertiary education. And this include going for vocational courses and TVET schools and all that. So how will this divide increase a lot more now that it's COVID, it's digital, and then not to mention the Ministry of Education is also now, they are changing the dates of exams, changing the dates of when the kids are able coming back to school, and then we don't even know when kids are able to learn formally again, right? A huge part of education is that face-to-face interaction that you simply is very difficult to duplicate in a digital platform. And then, and on the other hand, are our teachers also equipped to deliver classes online, right? So I think that's also another part where I think we often forget when it comes to looking at closing the digital divide. Sometimes it's not just enough to give kids data plans or giving kids laptops or extra phones, but it's also whether teachers are equipped to pivot their lesson plans to online, right? So one thing that also TFM did as a resource, I think within 1 month of MCO, they created tfmdistancelearning.org, which provided a few forms of lesson plans. One is for teachers and students with low bandwidth. One is for teachers and students medium bandwidth and high bandwidth. So with high bandwidth, schools can invest in using Canvas, using Moodles, things that I did in university. And then I see like kids as young as 10 years old logging on to Canvas and YouTube education. But then you also have kids with low bandwidth. So how do you deal with that, right? Teachers would pivot to delivering lessons on WhatsApp, right? Okay, open your book, read this, respond to me on WhatsApp. Text to me in English. Make sure that you use correct grammar before texting back your teacher, before texting in a WhatsApp group. So there are many ways to integrate the usage, integrating digital lessons in our daily lives. And these are one of the ways to do it. But I think the question of when you want to compare access and all that, which I know you'll touch into later, but another example is that when Undi 18 organized Parliament Digital in July, right? And that was, I would say, in a way, right, it is so brand new because our parliament refused to even consider it at that moment. But then again, if you look at regionally, countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, already pivoted to either full virtual parliamentary sitting or even a hybrid parliamentary sitting, like the UK did. So it was quite interesting, or it was very bizarre for us as young people to like, why isn't our institutions, right, regardless of whether it's a government or corporations or universities, why the hesitance to take that leap to embrace fully or to innovate in how we disseminate information, into how we engage and interact with the average Malaysians out there. So there are many ways to make digital content accessible, right? For Parliament Digital, we had a sign language interpreter, right? We had sign language interpreter. Whenever we can, we provide subtitles. These are all just tiny ways to make our content accessible and engaging, and it projects, sincerity and authenticity in engaging the wider Malaysian audiences, because you're showing them that you are trying the best you can to communicate as much information as we possibly can in this pandemic, which is the kind of reassurance that regular people are looking for from corporations, institutions, and governments.
Right. To audience who are watching today, two of our panelists, Mr. Sharil and Dr. Sumitra, have said that Malaysian youths are actually doing good in terms of digital competency, while there are still room for improvement. While two of our other panelists, Mr. J have said that have mentioned about digital disparity and how this impedes the further progress in empowering youths in Malaysia. So let's delve further into this digital disparity. Over the last many recent years, we have seen more focus in terms of youth empowerment and increasing their digital competency by both the government side as also the non-profit private sides. So, but do you think that this focus has been primarily on the urban areas, especially the well-to-do urban areas, and touching the less, like what Nukira said just now, those in those rural, urban poor? So do you think that this focus on youth empowerment has been extensive? And do you think that this will further worsen income inequality over the next few years because of this digital divide in Malaysia? Maybe we can start with Dr. Sumitra.
Thanks, Ganesh. You know, you're right. There is a risk, right? There is a risk for those who do not have access to these devices. But when you talk about, what initiatives have been done, whether it's by non-profit or private sector or government, I have a slightly different view. I don't think it's been limited to urban, because we do work extensively with a network of partners across the country who are trying their best, who understand that some of these areas don't have access, and they're trying their best through creative means to bring this access. So let me give you an example. We all know e-commerce. With COVID, e-commerce has experienced a huge sort of an uplift, right? But unfortunately, if you live in a rural area and you are engaged in cottage industries, you may not have the same access or the same knowledge. And so what we've done is we have worked with, there are these Pusat Internet Desas, this community internet centers, which are located by post offices in the same vicinity of a post office, each of them. And so we've actually gone in and provided this one-stop e-commerce service where the center managers have been trained to become almost like your online marketing agents, and there's a little photo booth there for you to take a picture of your local product. They will help you to put it onto a Shopee or a Lazada or some other online platform, and then help you to market it, right? And there's the logistics right by there. And so these are nationwide, right? So that's one example. So many other examples, right? We also have about 90 what we call digital maker hubs. And so these are maker spaces that are, again, established by either private sector or government agencies, state agencies, universities, or not-for-profits. If we had just gone and said, okay, we're only going to do the urban centers because that's the lowest cost, right? Then you just work with the private sector where there's a clear commercial viability. But because of this collaboration that there is there with all the different sectors, and you mentioned non-profit, and that's extremely important, we've been able to get it up to 90, right, across the country, including in places like Tawau, and many other areas like Kota Baru and so on and so forth. So I think you always need this collaboration to drive it, and there are efforts, and the good thing is there is realization, right? Yes, there are pockets of communities where they are behind, but I also like to think that, when there's a will, there's a way. And we all have seen Viviona, many other examples, right? When you really want to do something, there is a way, you will find a way to do it. But we cannot take our eye off that ball. We have to continue to drive and make sure that inequality it reduces, and that this equitable sort of scaling, of initiatives continue on, from all parties, and collaboration is key in this respect. Right.
Thanks, Dr. Sumitra. Maybe Jeff, you can also comment on this.
Yeah, I think collaboration is really a key here. The sad thing is when we look at some of the situations that happen outside of the urban areas, is that we assume with an investment that it's being made, and within a week or a month or a quarter that we will then reap the benefits, right? Sadly, that's not the case. Education is a very long process. It takes years of continuous investments, of continuous education, in order for us to actually reap the benefits, right? So this is something that we will have to continuously talk about it. I'm sure next year, if we do another event, we will still bring this same topic up, because the progress to actually achieving what we envision or what we dream is a long process, and it's never ending. You know, there's never a goal post or a finish line where you can cross it and you say, we've done it. You know, that it doesn't work that way, right? So what I would also like to point out is the way we teach and the way we are taught has to change. The problem with all this talk about digital education and going online is not the simple fact of just getting Wi-Fi, internet, 3G, 4G, laptops, iPads, tablets to the hands of the students and teachers, and then just saying that we've done it. It's not as simple as that. Because if it was, then we would have been solved a long time ago, right? Because MDAG and various other non-profit groups and private institutions and foundations have done that, right? What needs to change is the way that we teach in a digital environment has to change. And kudos to like Teach for Malaysia, who's actually like looking at low bandwidth, medium bandwidth, high bandwidth. That's a great first step to it, right? So what we look at in iLabs and in 42KL, in my perspective, is that we take it a step further with what we do is we remove teachers. So that itself, for us, we feel it's a very revolutionary way of teaching. Because teaching is always like, teachers, like the first syllable of the word, teaching is that teach, right? So we've actually removed that element completely now. How you learn is you learn together with your peers. Now, if you put that environment of peer-to-peer learning in areas like Tawau, for example, you would be surprised to see some of the outputs that come from that environment, because they are trying to solve problems for them to survive and for them to then strive, right? So it's very hard for us to go to certain of these kind of areas and implement things that we believe in the urban areas, like this is what you need to be done and this is how you can solve it, right? Because we don't understand the situation and the climate over there, right? So what we need to do is enable this kind of environment where you can share knowledge. There is a knowledge sharing economy that happens in that area. It's facilitated and empowered by digital because they have these tools, but they need to be able to have that knowledge sharing economy, right? Where they can then come up with great innovations that solves their own problems and sort of come up with solutions within their area, which we can then say like, this is a great way, and now we can then scale this up to different areas, because their problems are probably problems that happens in different areas as well, right? So that's how we need to look at, right? I think education itself needs to change. We can't just say like, let's put all the curriculum and the syllables that we've done in the last 50 years and put it online, and then give Wi-Fi and tablets, and that's it, right? That can't work.
Right. Very interesting point. Nukira, do you share your thoughts on this?
I agree with all of what Jeff said, right? How do you look at community-focused solutions when it comes to education and bridging the digital divide? Because, like he's right, teachers, they can't be at every single kids' homes all the time. If they can't be in school, then they lose connection with the kids. And then you also have talking about kids who don't even consider formal education as an option because they don't find it interesting, right? Which is often the case for low-income communities, right? Because they see that earning an income for my family is a lot more important than going to school and read a book. So I think institutions, and there's research that has been done, globally, regionally, into looking at how do you produce community-focused solutions? How do you empower the figures in a child's life when it comes to education? How do you work with the parents? How can you work with siblings? How can you work with ketua kampongs or resource areas within the kampong, within small towns or kampong, like what Dr. Sumitra mentioned with post office? Can you look at any of the existing Dewan Besar that's existing? How do you change those infrastructure to accommodate the pandemic today, right? Beyond just what it is now, right? How do we creatively innovate those spaces for kids to also learn?
What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, exactly what Dr. Sumitra said. I don't think there has been like any clear intended strategy to be divisive in terms of national implementation, not in this country and not any country that I see. Yeah, because at the end of the day, countries will want to create as much inclusion as possible, right? And what Jeff was saying as well, you don't just go out and teach, here's a module on digital competency. it should be infused in many other things as well that leads towards that. Because it will be a fatal flaw to think that let's go out and teach digital competency and that's it. Therefore, we have created inclusion. No, there's a lot of things like what Dr. Sumitra was saying, the values. We need to infuse a lot of that as well. So here's where I'd like to give some examples of what we have done, trying to infuse that in some of our programs. We started out in more traditional brick and mortar. We have a program called Casual Kids, which is about teaching financial literacy to school children. We started out very much brick and mortar in schools in Malaysia. Today it's running in 6 countries throughout ASEAN. We've trained more than 211,000 school kids across 6 countries, working with various stakeholders. And this is where Jeff also mentioned the need to work with multi-level stakeholders, have various kinds of engagement, because it needs to be a concerted effort. So we have digitized much of our financial literacy program. We have created online applications, apps, marketplace, and so on for them for these 9 to 12-year-olds to pretend that they're adults, that they are able, they actually get points, and that they're able to make purchases and so on. So in teaching financial literacy, we also infuse and enhance digital competency. So that's an example of a program that we have. Another program that we have, which we're very proud about, is called Empowering Youth Across ASEAN. It's a partnership with ASEAN itself through the ASEAN Foundation. We find the top 100 youth across Southeast Asia, across the 10 ASEAN countries, and we get thousands of applications. We choose the best 100, 10 from each ASEAN country. Start off with a capacity building workshop at the ASEAN Study Center of Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, and we partner them with CSOs and NGOs. We send them for community investment programs that we fund, and we find that many of them are non-urban kids, right? And that's where we can already state from the onset that digital competency has very little to do with, where you are, and certainly an intelligence level as well, you cannot make an assumption that just because somebody is from a rural area that he will not perform as well, given the opportunities. So we've seen that, and we've put a lot of applications for that as well. But certainly all the right things have been said. It needs to be a big concerted effort. Everybody's got to come together, government certainly, and various institutions and private sector, and to make it happen.
Right.
I just want to add on to Shahril, right? Like you mentioned, great point in terms of how you're building this, right? If you were to summarize this, I know we spent a bit too long on this question, but if you were to summarize, digital is not a tool, it's actually a culture. So I think we need to think of how we actually, when we say digital, it's not a tool, it's a culture itself, right? And when it becomes a culture, then we will really see the benefits and reap the benefits from this.
Yeah, the danger is for people to think it's end all be all.
That's my concern too. It shouldn't be, right?
Right.
It's an enabler. It's the way we do things. It's culture. That's what culture is. It's how we do things, right?
So the bottom line is we shouldn't be too rigid how we see this change towards digital competency.
I mean, that's important, definitely. If you think about it, if you take an analogy, if you have 2 guys just as intelligent, right, and you give them a problem, let's say you give them wood, and you say go build a house, right? So obviously the guy who's got carpentry knowledge will be able to build that house better and faster compared to the guy who doesn't. He's going to struggle with it. Same thing with digital, right? So if you have digital knowledge, obviously you can get along faster and better, and you can be more competitive in what you do. But digital alone is not going to do it, right? So you still need to have that problem solution focus, that problem solving, that curiosity, that empathy. All that still needs to be there, right? And that's most important, because if you have that, the other things you can learn along the way. And the great thing about digital is it is quite democratized in the sense that you can learn it at any point. It doesn't mean that if you miss it in school, you can't learn it as an adult. You can. My 80-year-old dad is extremely active on social media, right? And he learnt it. He never had formal lessons, but self-learn, right? And there are kids like that too that are from the rural areas who have self-taught. We've had kids who've put stuff on Apple stores, and there's this one kid generated more than 600,000 ringgit in revenue, right? Just from apps that he put on iOS store, right? And who taught him? Self-taught.
Right.
So as long as you have the mindset, the growth mindset, and the willingness and the know-how on how to self-learn, you can pick it up.
I know that we have spent quite some time on the second question, but it was very, we see different opinions and very, very insightful views on this. A key point that I took from this is that digital is a culture, and we have to find a way to make it more inclusive. We have to infuse it in the education system, and for that we need to rethink how do we provide the education system to our kids. How do we do the teaching moving forward, especially post-COVID-19. So let's take a moment and let's now imagine ourselves being a decision maker at the Ministry of Education. So today we are now someone in the Ministry of Education, and let's say today we are going to make a policy for how can we make a 7-year-old kid today digitally competent and future ready when he or she is 16 or 15 years old later than over the next 9 or 10 years. So what kind of revamp do we have to introduce in the local education system? Any one of you want to start with? Maybe Kira?
That's
Whatever thing that comes into your mind now.
I think for me, when it comes to education, and something I'm very passionate about, right? So before OD18, I worked in Teach for Malaysia, which is why I'm very familiar with their programs. I always believe that the most important core competency, digital ke tak digital, you have to infuse and cultivate in children is critical thinking. Without critical thinking, without the ability to question, the ability to have self-awareness, it's very difficult for kids to embrace any form of new knowledge without it becoming information regurgitated from the teachers. So I always believe that, in our, I've had the privilege of experiencing both private and public education. And you can see one of the clearest differences that I've experienced is that I'm always challenged in terms of my mindset and my beliefs when I'm not in public school in Malaysia, right? Whether this comes to autonomy or capacity or ability, that's a different question altogether. But as a student, I really appreciated having my biases, my beliefs being challenged within a classroom setting, because it is a safe setting where you're able to voice up your opinions. I think that and then transitioning out into university where almost all my education tools were, either a laptop or a phone, you communicate through emails with the professors, all that. It really teaches you, that transition makes it a lot more, it becomes a lot more easier when you have that ability to have critical thinking, because it affects how you interact with others, it affects how you become a user online, and it also affects how you, interact with society overall. So for me, it's something that I've been advocating for years, is to infuse more critical thinking within our education system. And how do you translate, how do you show the kids that what they learn in classroom can translate into real life, and why it's so important to carry those skills up into real life when they leave school, no matter what age they leave school.
Right. So Sharil, just now you spoke about having the need to create inclusion in the education system. So back to my earlier question just now, what kind of revamp do you think is necessary?
Actually, that's such a huge question. I don't realize, I don't know whether you realize how big that question is. There's a group of highly intelligent people called PADU in the Ministry of Education, plus a lot of other people as well trying to do that. And I have a lot of respect for what TFM does. I have volunteered for TFM. I was taught one day at a school in Banting, and I know what great stuff they do. And I know what great things institutions that come out with, trust schools are coming out with. It's a huge thing, but perhaps, and I'm not going to be able to tell you, but perhaps some of the things that needs to be thought, as part of a larger revolution, because it needs to be a big mindset change revolution. Start thinking about recognizing things like micro-credentials, rather than let's wait 6 years to take an exam, or let's 3 years to take an exam. Start recognizing things like micro-credentials. Allow various stages of intervention during the school that infuses things, that forces them to go more digital, for example, that forces the government to introduce more infrastructure for digital. Yeah, but micro-credentials, I mean, we in Maybank, we're quite familiar with that already. We have in our AI labs that we introduce for our staff to do Python. I mean, these are non-technical people that do Python, do R at basic and intermediate level. Yeah, I had no idea what Python was just a couple years ago. Yeah, but Yeah, not a snake. Yeah, but it's something that you give the opportunity, and
Right.
and this is the way that you create more inclusion. But maybe perhaps start looking at micro credentials.
Right. A very interesting point. Maybe Dr. Sumitra, you want to add anything on this?
Yeah. No, I think both Kira and Cheryl made some very great points. What I would perhaps, if I were in that seat, and I'm sure the government is already thinking about this, is how do we get our children to be self-learners? Yeah, and how do we get them engaged in the learning process? Right. If you think about a commercial company, when they put their products out, they look at customer engagement indices. When you are in an organization, you have employee engagement indices. I don't know if we have student engagement indices, right? And I actually think, based on what I've observed, is there are many children who may be disengaged, and I think this is an area of work that TFM has probably done a lot of areas. So maybe we also need to think about a student engagement index, right? How engaged are our children in that learning process? That's probably one thing we can do. And then the second one is, to as I said, to cultivate this ability to self-learn, right? And to do that, to be self-learners, they need to be curious. They need to question. And they need to be given the freedom to question, and not to overemphasize conformity, which is what we tend to do, follow the rules, follow this way of thinking. And so that's when you can't challenge by, your other views and so on. So how do we break that? This overemphasis on conformity and this overprotection of, how to think, what to think. It can't be about that. We need to free them up. We need to empower them with the right values, and then let them unleash that curiosity, develop the critical thinking, and they will immediately have to learn and pick up skills in order to solve those problems. Yeah. So those are my views.
So interesting sharing this now. You mentioned that we have to create an enabling environment so that the kids can pick up values, and then they can, like Kira said, also we have to make them being able to be critically, they need to have a critical mindset so that they can think of their own. But the question is our current education system accommodative enough to allow that?
You asked what we would do to change, and this is what we would do to change, right? So assuming you can start afresh, assuming there is a blank canvas, this is what needs to be done.
Right.
And I think it's not as if all teachers are not doing the right thing. There are many that are. And
Right.
we've seen so many, not just in TFM, but so many others, even in rural areas. We need to make them the champions. We need to make them the ones that inspire that change from around their community. Get more teachers into it and show them what's possible. Like we've got kids from Kubang Krian, right, who come out and speak like as if, they are speaking on a world stage, at fantastic communication skills. They've thought through the problem, they're able to communicate. Government school, right? And there are many others like this, but not enough, perhaps not enough, right? So how do we then get them to inspire change with the others? If we continue to say that, is it possible, can we do it, we're not there yet, nothing will happen, right? We will have to look forward and we will have to move forward. Pick our battles, and highlight those success stories, as what Jeff said, highlight more of them, then we can start to inspire change, community by community.
Right. Jeff, you want to add to this?
The beauty of going last in this is I had time to flash back to about 20 years ago when I was in my final year of my Sekolah Menengah journey, right? But I echo to all of my esteemed panelists have mentioned here. But if I were to look back on my own personal journey, right? So I was never one of those students that fit in the education model. You have to memorize everything, you get an A or 100, and then you pass, and then you can go for scholarships, grants, and go up to the higher education and study abroad and all that kind of stuff, right? I was never that kind of student. I struggled in sekolah rendah, sekolah menengah. I really did. I struggled because I just couldn't fit in whatever that this is the only way to succeed. Is that you have to get A's in this subject, this subject, this subject, and if you fail this, it's going to reflect badly on you. I feel what needs to, if there are many things that needs to be changed. But one of the areas that we could also look at is how do we actually encourage those who actually just don't fit in this model, like how we celebrating like failure, like we punish failure. You know, if you fail something, you then, you know, in classes, right? So I was in like kind of like the middle of my high school, like I was in like class H, you know, so it's like kind of like in the middle. For those who do well, they get in class A, class B, class C, right? And then those who don't do well the following year, you then get demotivated down to the lower class. So mentally, and you know, it affects you, right? You feel like I'm just not good enough as some of my other peers that I see, right? So I feel like that impacted me quite a fair bit, which I then had to find my own way of actually, you know, surviving and trying to survive and strive in different areas, right? And actually make it on my own, right? Even families then, you know, they were like, maybe he needs help, you know, maybe we need to send him for extra tuition classes and stuff like that, right? But there was nothing wrong. It's just that I didn't fit in the model, you know? I feel that's one of the areas where, you know, it could be looked at. Because not everyone succeeds in one certain area, right? There's no book that can tell you, like, if you do this from A to Z, guaranteed success. There's no such thing. So I think we need to see how education can adapt to the various different types of individuals who have different skills. You know, we already have like, you know, TVET, you know, which really does help in this move to Industrial Revolution 4.0. You know, what about STEM education, right? Are we doing enough in that area, right? So there are many different areas. Of course, I'm in no position to tell, you know, the people who are in power to actually, these are the things that you should do. And I'm sure they are already thinking about many different areas of how they can, it's a long journey. If we could answer this in a 10 minutes session, then, you know, wow, you know, it would be great, right? But I'm sure they're talking about this. But these are the things that maybe we ourselves should also look at. Parents, you know, teachers, you know, when you do teach some of these kids who continuously fail, maybe, you know, there is a way to actually approach them differently instead of punishing them if they fail, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are many the school kids and youths out there who just doesn't fit in whatever marking mechanism that we have now, just like in your case. And I think rather than playing a blame game, you know, blaming the teachers or the government or the private sector, it's better for everyone together and then come up with a macro and micro kind of approach to deal with this. So, we have a few more minutes left, so maybe we can go a quick round of sharing, starting with Mr. Sharil. How do you think the civil society has performed the last few years in enabling this youth empowerment in digital competency? And moving forward, well, what is your aspirations?
I think by and large, civil society has done fairly well. Yeah, in fact, I mean they've done better in many aspects of the non-civil society in that respect. And in many cases, they are not even reacting; they are innovating, particularly through areas, as I say, it's not primarily to address digital competency, but through their social enterprises, through some of the business startups that they do, you know, and they find those solutions to some of the other problems, and in the process, they also address some of the issues that needs to be addressed. So I think in terms of civil society, not too bad. What we do in Member Foundation, we also help capacity building some of these CSOs that we work with, and we share our knowledge with what we have in terms of our expertise. Quite a bit more to be done, but I would think on the overall, for civil societies in Malaysia at least, not too bad.
Right.
Yeah, we do, at MDEC, we do a lot of work with not-for-profits and with social enterprises, and they definitely have a big role to play. I'm not in a position to comment if they're receiving enough support. I'm not sure, yeah. But I think maybe we need to encourage not-for-profits or even NGOs or charitable organizations to also adopt new thinking, yeah. So, you know, if in the past, right, when you think about charitable organizations, they depend on charities, they depend on donations, right? More and more, I think that's becoming more and more challenging, you know, where you have a model where you're entirely dependent on donations. Right. And so they also need to pivot towards looking at more social innovation, social enterprises, have a different model that makes them more sustainable, right? But I think as far as Malaysian ones are concerned, yes, we do have a fair bit of them who are innovative, who are collaborative, and we need to encourage more participation from more parts of the civil society.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Sumitra. Jeff?
Yeah, so I think they're doing a great job. What's encouraging is actually a lot of these non-for-profit organizations are actually led and started by youth,
Yes.
right? Like, Undi 18, Teach for Malaysia, right? So that is a very encouraging sign that you see the youth are now a lot more aware of what they actually have, the power that they have to make that change. They're a lot more invested in sustainability than my generation per se, and even some maybe the older generation as well. There are a lot more, like you see, like Greta Thunberg and stuff, right? So these are individuals who are really rallying up the youth, and we should enable them to actually come up with their own non-for-profit organization or their community, and to actually empower that, right? I think it's really encouraging to see the world is really embracing that change. The youth are really making that stand up, and I have to say kudos to Undi 18 to actually stepping up and making that change, because I think what Kira and her team has done is fascinating, and yeah, so great stuff.
Right. Thanks, Jeff. Kira?
Yeah, I think I'll just try our best to keep this short as well. I think a lot of non-profits and advocacy campaign like ours come from a place of scarcity, right? And we always operate on a limited resources. I also can't say whether all NGOs are adequately supported as well, because it's so challenging to even map out the complete ecosystem that we exist in. But I think this actually may be an unpopular opinion among my peers in my field, is that I believe that non-profits and especially advocacy campaign like ours, right? Like we push for youth empowerment and youth enfranchisement, all that, is that how do you also have that business development mindset where you don't just rely on charity or donors to give you? Because then personally for me, I'm not the biggest fan of that model of if an organization adopt that model entirely as its business model, because then you are entirely reliant on what they say or what they would ask you to do, and then it leaves you with very little creative space and innovation space actually. And I think for Undi 18, it's like an annual target. How do we make something cool every year? How do we make history every year in that sense? I feel like if we rely on the traditional way of how NGOs operate, we might be limited in that sense, right? So I think at Undi 18, we try our best to encourage and also set the culture for youth organizations that are playing in the field as we do, is that how do you challenge yourself to become innovative in how we source funding, in how we create events, how we do program design, how do we also measure it and our impact as well. I think these are all key things that many young people don't consider when they start off their own movement or start off their own organization, and then they realize later that when they want to scale and they want to expand, that this is the challenges, because these are all what sophisticated funders will ask for. How do you prove your impact? How do you justify the ROI and all that? And I think for us, we learned the hard way, and I think so one of my aspirations is that more youth NGOs would consider these aspects that might be the boring side of organizing and organization, but it is part and parcel of running a successful organization.
Right. Thank you, Kira. And to those who are watching, we have come to the end of our session today, Power Panel session today. And thank you to all our speakers, Mr. Sharil, Dr. Sumitra, Jeff, and Kira. Thank you for your insights. And as we have heard from them, youth empowerment and making them digitally competent is not is a never-ending journey. So, and it's a very flexible and fluid. We need a flexible and fluid kind of approach in making sure that empowering the youth can be done across the board, reaching even those at the rural areas. And we do not have the time to play blame game. Instead, everyone has to work together in order to make this a success for the youths of Malaysia. So thank you for your time, dear speakers. And I think I have played my role in provoking you to give answers. And thank you to the viewers. Thank you.
Hi everyone, we hope that you have enjoyed the opening power panel as much as we did. A discussion about digital youth empowerment touched on a lot of different veins, from social inequalities to the meaning of digital, what digital really means, as well as the approaches in which our education system can take in order to empower youths. I'm personally very, very grateful to have heard all of this. I think discourse happening, and I think it's important that it did. So I want to thank our panelists, Ganesh, Haril, Dr. Sumitra, Jeff, and Kira, for such a great, insightful, and wide discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering the first thematic track of the day, the people track, which is powered by EY. Today, we are seeing a double disruption phenomenon, digital and COVID-19, and their impact not just on businesses, but also on the workforce. And to open the session, our keynote speaker will shed some light on this issue of, is your workforce your greatest asset in a digital world? Ladies and gentlemen, here is Lau Chow Huat, a partner at EY.
Hi, very good morning, everyone. Firstly, a massive thank you to the STAR for the opportunity to speak in this wonderful Digital X Data event this morning. And to those tuning in, thank you for your time and your participation. Well, for the past 10 months or so, a lot has been talked about on the people agenda given the COVID-19 pandemic situation. Lives, livelihoods, working from home, gig economy, well-being, etc. has been discussed extensively. Now, the narrative on the people agenda is really shifting up another gear. My name is Choi Huat, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'll share with you our views on this developing narrative about your greatest asset, your workforce. Double whammy or opportunity. So let's start with where we are today. And it's quite clear that today we're all facing different challenges of dealing with the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in the last 10 months, and also the effects of digitalization over the past years. Professionally and personally, I believe all of us have our own stories to tell, right? From initially, starting from working from home, perhaps, to now, to perhaps losing a loved one. Many sectors are also impacted negatively, and many people have lost their jobs. So the question is, how do we turn both of these into opportunities for us to thrive? Well, the solution clearly puts the human at the center in everything we do. Let me explain. There are three key things that we believe that can really move the needle and really matters when you focus on the human side of the equation. One, it starts with the head, right? By having a right mindset, being adaptable, resilient, strong, and focused. Two, it's about the hands. There's been a lot of discussions around upskilling and reskilling, and that's now really taking center stage. And I'll get into that a bit more detail later. And third is really around the heart, right? Letting purpose lead the way. So for the rest of this presentation, I'll focus on each of these elements. But before I jump into each of the elements in more detail, let me share with you the reality on how companies have pivoted, right, over the past few months. As you can see, companies have already pivoted at speed and at scale. Many have started to rebalance their workforce. Many have rapidly digitalized the way that they work. And skills development is on fire. In Malaysia, if you look around us, there are many examples of digitalization happening around us, right? Far more faster than ever before. And globally, many companies have even started to use 5G to shift the way that they engage their consumers and take digitalization to the next level. So, this leads us to the next question. How fast and effective can we adopt new ways of working? The simple answer is that it's here already today, and it's evolving faster than you think. We see many companies here in Malaysia have experimented with agile, right? Whether it's a concept or it's a different ways of working, doing away from formal organizational structures to using design thinking methods to run workshops, setting up project structures in a different way, using Scrum Masters and tribes, and even taking a hard look at agile methods to improve operational efficiency. Interestingly, here you see an example of a bank. And you imagine banks are quite traditional in the way that they work. They put a lot of emphasis on risk, governance, and control. But one bank has pivoted very quickly into really moving from a hierarchical ways of working into one that really focuses around the customers, about problem solving, and about breaking silos at speed. Now, in Malaysia, I know many companies have started to experiment with agile in different forms and shapes. I suppose the question is this really effective? The verdict, I think, is still out there, right, on whether it truly improves productivity and culture beyond the hard numbers. But importantly, I think there is no turning back. I think this is the time where things is moving forward. And the real question is, if there's no turning back, can this really be sustainable? Let me share more. In our view, what's important in Agile is not about the methodology. It's about the mindset, shifting from a fixed mindset where people look at very fixed ways of working into a growth mindset where it takes courage, both at organizational level and individual level, to be successful. Be curious, go learn something new, and be comfortable in working environments that you don't know, and thrive in unknowns. I think those are the essence of a growth mindset. So as you know, breaking mindsets and culture for us here in Malaysia it's not easy, right? So it takes a lot of courage and practice and discipline to learn new ways of working with an open mind. So Agile is not just a ways of working, but more importantly, it's a mindset that we have to adopt. Now, pushing forward with the right mindsets, let's talk about equipping Malaysians with the right skills. Now, this is not new to some of you. In fact, there are multiple platforms, right, ranging from government incentives, as you can see in this slide, through the recent national budget, to many platforms like 42KL, Forward School, etc. Now, the good news is that this is a good thing, right? We're making progress. And if you look at our neighbors down south in Singapore, they have made a lot of progress too, through Skills Future Singapore and so on and so forth. And in our experience in Malaysia, we've also observed that there are many GLCs who have recently set up academies to also push the reskilling agenda forward. So the question is, how do you get this right? One important element is to move forward towards hyper-personalized learning, right? From the traditional ways of learning where one size fits all to something where it is more personalized to the individual. Ask me, tell me, show me, right? It really focuses on the learning experience that really matters. And to bring this to life, some of our clients actually use learning AI technologies to develop success profile, matching competencies and proficiency gaps with courses, and generating learning adoption analytics and tracking skills completion rates, right? So just through the AI, and the whole process is automated. Therefore, companies which adopted this approach have successfully targeted very tangible learning outcomes, particularly in times where people are working from home and they have to learn at the same time, right? So therefore, the notion of micro skills is now becoming far more important, which I'll cover in a minute. So what are some of the skills that we're talking about here? So let's start with the soft skills. So here we're not talking about the traditional soft skills like communication, team building, but it is a deeper notion of leading in a digital world through enhanced human connections. So you see things like navigation, connection, the ability to relate, and think clearly, right, as domain skill sets that people need to have today and into the future. And let me just pick an example. If you look at leading with purpose, right, this is quite unconventional, as a skill set. But if you get it right, it can be very powerful because the ability to connect individual purpose with organizational purpose is very powerful, but it requires a fair bit of reflection, a fair bit of presence, and it's really about thinking forward, right? So it is a very different type of soft skills versus the traditional ones that we are used to. Next, if you think about what are some of the hard technical or functional skills that are relevant in the digital world, you can see this is a jigsaw puzzle where there are multitude of micro skills to pick up. And this is really not an exhaustive list. However, ensuring flexibility of these micro skills are attained and applied at the right time when work needs to be done is very critical. Now, many companies take a blended approach to apply these micro skills in a particularly functional area to accelerate development. Let me give you an example. In one of our clients, the finance function took the challenge to enable their finance team to learn design thinking and RPA as part of reskilling them to solve a finance process issue, right? Now, traditionally, you would think that this would probably be done by the IT team or the consulting team, but it's not, right? So there goes the challenge around designing and implementing solutions by the finance function for the finance function. And to me, this is a shift, right, from a very traditional way of process and business improvements through micro-skilling. Now, what have we done at EY, right? We have more than 260,000 employees globally. How do you reskill our workforce? So at EY, there are 3 tracks that we look at in terms of reskilling. One is around technology areas, and you can see data analytics, AI, cybersecurity, and so forth. Secondly, is around leadership, and we really focus around purpose and the team that you work with. And thirdly, is just around business, right? So many of our employees have completed these badges, right? Myself included. I've done 4 badges, and I'm doing my 5th one. But the ability to really do the badging, as some of you guys know, can be quite a challenge because more often than not, it is a lot of commitment and time that's required, and there's a lot more ownership that you will need to really do it well. Now, what's interesting is that once a micro skill is attained, an EY badge is issued to the individual who will own it for his or her life. Now, next, linking reskilling, it's around career pathways. Now, there are many roles and jobs have emerged as a result, as you can see on this slide. So gone are the administrative, repeatable tasks that could be taken by digital technologies. What's emerging are the likes of data analysts, data scientists, cloud engineers, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the new jobs. They are really emerging. And if you think about the different layers of workforce that you have, right? Whether it's at entry level or mid-career or senior management, I think these are some of the key roles and jobs that companies do look for. So as these trends continue, the real question is, how do you make sure that work is meaningful, right? Yet appealing to different generations. So it comes back to where we started this presentation. It's really focusing about human at center, focusing on making sure that the work is meaningful, is impactful, and is inspirational. So we believe that the future of work is really anchored by purpose-driven people. So I'll end this presentation by sharing a short video to get into a sneak preview into the future on how 133 million roles can be impacted by purpose-driven work. Thank you so much for your attention.
COVID-19 has changed the world of work as we know it. More than 40% of us plan to change the way we travel, shop, entertain, and spend time with our families. A real global shift in the new normal. With the rapid evolution of machines and technology, we will reimagine how work gets done to create 133 million new roles at a time when employees expect more purpose-driven work. A common theme is emerging among those who appear to be thriving where others are simply surviving. Their response is anchored in their purpose, their organizational values, and how their leaders live these values, even in times of crisis, creating a culture that puts humans at the center. So how can you upskill and unleash the potential of your COVID-19 has changed the world of work as we know it. More than 40% of us plan to change the way we travel, shop, entertain, and spend time with our families. A real global shift in the new normal. With the rapid evolution of machines and technology, we will reimagine how work gets done to create 133 million new roles at a time when employees expect more purpose-driven work. A common theme is emerging among those who appear to be thriving where others are simply surviving. Their response is anchored in their purpose, their organizational values, and how their leaders live these values, even in times of crisis, creating a culture that puts humans at the center. So how can you upskill and unleash the potential of your employees with a restrictive and outdated model? By moving away from fixed roles and skills to an adaptive model that continuously evolves skill sets, mindsets, teams, and organizations, transforming human resources into strategic champions. By bringing your culture to life through your people and purpose in an environment that supports their best work. Inspiring innovation, unlocking greater value, and unleashing human power. Bringing the future of work into the now. Preparing your workforce for what's next and beyond. Learn how you can empower your people transformation at ey.com/PAS.
Thank you so much, Troy Hart, for the insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, to complement the people track, we are joined by a great panel lineup of industry-leading HR transformation, human capital, and people management subject matter experts and practitioners from various backgrounds. Our first guest has, in the last 14 years, successfully helped organizations to elevate their digital experience for employees and customers in various domains, including service management and security operations. He is Liu Kok Moon, Senior Manager of Solution Consulting at ServiceNow. Our next guest is a head of people for Tesco Malaysia. Mr. Alvin Lau is an experienced HR professional with more than 18 years of experience spanning multiple industries, and he is very passionate about unleashing people's potential and development. Our third guest is United Nations Development Programme's Global Shared Services Unit Director for Kuala Lumpur and Copenhagen. Noni Mafabune's unit provides administrative, transactional, and compliance services to 170 countries and other United Nations agencies in finance, HR, and procurement. And moderating the panel is Cheryl Chow from EY, who has more than 20 years of experience specializing in human capital consulting. Wow, you can never get a better mix of a panel lineup to talk about the subject matter at hand. But, however, we are going to take a little break before the panel session so that everybody can get ready. The panel is getting ready soon, but stay tuned and tune in back at 11:10 a.m. for the panel to start. So get your coffee or pet your cat or go to the toilet, whatever that you need to do to be ready. Come back and pay attention. All right, see you guys at 11:10.
to all our audience behind the screen. We are live in the studio, projecting to you a panel, another interesting panel for our session this morning. And I'm joined by a very interesting esteemed list of panelists for today. Let me just quickly introduce them. We have got Noni Mafabuni. She is the Director of Global Shared Services Unit, UNDP. I think she doesn't need any further introduction. We've got Liu Kokman, Senior Manager of ServiceNow Solution Consulting. It's always good to have a mix of consultant amongst the panelists to really share a point of view, both from a consultant perspective as well as employee perspective. And we've got, last but not least, Alvin Lau, which is the head of people from Tesco Stores, our favorite family community store. I go to Tesco every other day. So great supporter of Tesco. I am Cheryl, associate partner with EY Advisory Services, and I will be the moderator for today. Doing the easier job. I'll leave the difficult job to all of you. I'll just ask a question. So without further delay, let me just do a quick introduction. I think in the earlier session, my partner talked about workforce being your greatest asset in a digital world. How this is linked to purpose by putting human at center. And he talked about 3H, the head, the hand, and the heart. I'd like to do a quick exercise. And this is a bit impromptu. Hopefully it's not too surprising for my panelists here. I promise you we didn't rehearse this, right? I will call out your name and I will give you a word and you have 2 seconds to give me a response. All right? Noni, colors.
Orange.
Kokman, car.
Proton.
And Elvin, cash. Again?
Fish.
Okay, interesting. Let's do this again. Second time. I'll give you a little bit more time. This time you've got 5 seconds. And I'll ask you a question. Okay, maybe this time we'll start with Kokman. What is your favorite food?
Sushi.
Okay. And Alvin, what do you do for fun?
Reading.
Noni, last but not least, what kind of flowers do you like?
Red roses.
Nice. All right. That quick exercise just proved to us one thing. We talk about the head, the hand, and the heart, but how often do we actually use our hand and our heart in the right time, in the right place? Especially when we talk about transformation and we talk about changes in organizations. I think that quick exercise just now, the very first round, I gave you very limited time. So time is of essence. And there's not much instruction, not much question. I just give you a word. There was a lot of uncertainty. And naturally, we being human beings, we will respond with our heart. More unconsciously, go with something that we are comfortable with, right? But in the second round, as you notice, I give you a little bit more context. I give you a little bit more time. And you seem to think a bit before you respond. So it looks like you use your head a little bit more than just going with your heart. So it's the same in organization as we go through transformation, as we go through changes. When our employees are faced with time-sensitive situation, and given very little context, that's where people will naturally go back to their usual self and will respond only to something that they're comfortable with. So let me just go back to what my partner has said earlier. Given the importance of people for our panel today, we are going to discuss how can we humanize technology and digital into the workforce of tomorrow. Humanizing here means we are appealing to both the heart and the head, and hopefully the hand will cooperate with us and do what it takes to do the job. So due to the pandemic, organizations are forced to transform overnight. Question is, how ready are organizations in Malaysia or around the world coping with this rapid need to transform? Are the people technology or digital ready? We are faced with a situation where we are all had to fix the plane while it's flying. So how do we prepare the virtual future work environment to address some of these challenges whilst putting the employee and customer experiences in the forefront of transformation? So very first question to kickstart our session today. Maybe I'll start with Noni this time. What has been the biggest people challenge for your organization?
Wow, it's the fact that from having an office of over 300 in one location, in one place at the same time zone, and then suddenly we're all geographically dispersed, geographically dispersed within Malaysia, and not having the ability to connect, not having the ability to have the social interaction, the verbal, the when you talk to someone, you can actually understand the extent of the problem, or you can even understand their personal circumstances without actually getting it from them. So for us, the biggest challenge really was the social and the emotional disconnect. Because if you understand the type of work that we do, it's very important that our colleagues, our team members show up every day in the right frame of mind, and for the team leaders and the managers to be able to connect with their staff. And so the disconnection has really been the biggest challenge for us. But at some time during the session, I can walk you through the things that we have done to bring people back together again. Thank you.
Thank you, Noni. That will be interesting to hear. What have UNDP done to really bring back engagement to the employees while they are very much a distance from us? So maybe let me move on to Coltman. How about yourself? I mean, for ServiceNow, I mean, another consulting services firm, I must say, as an employee, I mean, what are some of the people challenges that you face in the organization?
Yeah, I think I echo what Noni has mentioned earlier. If we go back to the team where we talk about head, the hand, and the heart, I think what Noni mentioned is very much focused around the heart. So if I can just turn things around a bit and focus a little bit more about the head and the hand, I think one of the biggest challenge we have is that all 12,000 employees of ServiceNow globally, we then have to work from home just like what Noni had mentioned. But then how do we keep them productive? How do we keep them contributing as per when they were in the office as well? So that has been challenging, interesting right along the way. So imagine this from IT perspective. Instead of supporting 100 offices globally, all of a sudden, overnight almost, we are supporting 12,000 offices around the globe. And he has got various degrees of infrastructure, right? So in Malaysia, we are quite fortunate to have very good infrastructure in terms of internet, but in some other countries, we may not be as fortunate. So the ability to actually cater and manage all of these different things, has been interesting for us as a company.
Thank you, Coltman. Alvin. Interestingly, because Tesco, as we know it, being an MNC, I'm sure you've got a lot more stuff that it's under your purview. How are you coping with the engagement level of the stuff that's under Tesco?
Thank you, Cheryl. It's a very different dynamic, I would say. During the movement control order period, we have a different mix of colleagues. On one hand, we have head office colleagues. On the other hand, we have our stores, which requires to operate because we are part of essential services. And on the other hand, we also have a distribution center who is operating 24/7 as well, so that they pick and collect all the stocks so that the stocks can be delivered to the stores, and we can then sell it to our customers. So it is very different dynamic in the sense that the people at the front line, especially our colleagues in stores and distribution centers, are working extremely hard, while at the same time have posed very serious health challenges on them as well. They are required to come to work on a daily basis. So this kind of concern for the team as well. So engagement and communication will be very utmost important, and also in terms of motivating them to deliver the results and serve our customer better.
I mean, although we may say that we can understand what you've just explained, but just like today, we came to the studio having maybe different expectations of how the studio would look like, and here we are live, seeing things happening back behind the scene. Similarly to your situation, we may not see all these things that you've described to us behind the scene, all the workers in Tesco that has been putting up around the clock in order to provide the essential, each essential services to customers like ourselves. But again, maybe just a follow-up question, given that you are in a retail business and traditionally very much brick and mortar setup, I must say, although there are some online services that you provide. Any impact to your business due to the lockdown? And how do you keep your people safe and well during this period?
Thanks, Cheryl. So, related to the question you posed earlier, in terms of impact on the business during the lockdown, I would say, as many of you are aware, that during the initial lockdown, which was announced during March, we've seen the panic buying across our stores, and I think one of the most popular items you may be well aware is tissue
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
That's right.
Up until now,
I
I
wonder
have no
why.
idea why the toilet paper is a fairly popular items to be bought during that period. But as time's gone by, I think the panic buying has kind of stabilized. Even now we are in the CMCO period, it's kind of very much stabilized. So I would say, and relates back to the online business. We do have online business called grocery home shopping, or we call it as Tesco online as well. So customers can just click and order online, and then the team will then deliver to the customer's house directly. So for this online business, we have also seen an increase, incremental increase in terms of customers purchasing on this mode as well.
Thank you for that, Alvin. It's interesting. I was just about to ask a follow-up question again. This is just for my personal interest. Why toilet paper? Do you know? I mean, has there been any study?
Well, frankly
wondering.
speaking, personally, I have no idea why it's toilet paper. So it's just that it's the mentality of the shoppers, I would say. So when they see people stack up toilet papers, they will want to purchase more. So that's more into my own perspective.
Right. So, herd mentality. All right. Maybe I'll move on to Noni. So, being a global network office like UNDP, you naturally depend heavily on technology, like what you rightly mentioned earlier, to connect with your team from different parts of the world. How has this changed since COVID-19 pandemic? And you talk a little bit about the challenge in engaging your people across the world. So maybe you can share with us a little bit about some of the interventions they've put in place.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. So in terms of technology, I think we were forced to accelerate a lot of our plans. Before COVID, we primarily depended on email and Skype for Business. But what I noticed is that around about March, April, we suddenly went into the Zoom world, we went into the Teams world. WhatsApp became a familiar communication channel even for work. And we even created, amongst teams, we even created chat groups within WhatsApp. So when the MCO started, we created chat groups by teams. So every morning people would wake each other up, check each other out, because at some point we thought this was just going to happen for a month or so. We didn't realize it would continue to go on and on. But it helped create those peer groups and those support networks. As we migrated and progressed with the MCO, we then realized that, you know what, this is going to go on for a while. And then we started having what we call virtual coffees. So virtual coffees primarily is where we come online and you talk about anything and nothing. You say, okay, I'm Noni, you know what, these days I'm baking, I'm learning a new skill, and someone is talking about makeup. You know, it was just, we create these opportunities almost every week where people just come and say what they've learned. In terms of the engagement aspect, I think also what we have done is, on top of these informal sessions that we have, we've also started sending these newsletters or what we call virtual tours. So we can actually, our communication team will send us, like on a Friday, a virtual tour of a museum in France. So you can actually go in and you can actually be in France, you know, in the cyberspace, or you can visit the UNESCO sites, through your computer. So we've created a number of situations where people just chill out, and then you break out from your workspace. And last but not least, we're always very concerned about the economics of offices. Because at home, most people are working from either from their couch or from their dinner table. So we send out a lot of these tips and things that you ought to do and not to do. I mean, I could go on and on the whole day, but allow me to stop here for now.
Thank you, Noni. It's interesting because a client of mine also did the same. They started sharing recipes. So looks like that is the new norm. You wake up with MS Teams and WhatsApp, more so than on the phone and in front of your laptop. All right, very, very interesting and very, very interesting way of engaging your staff around the world. And I love the virtual tours. You can not be physically in France where you're in France and see what the French do, right? Interesting. Maybe I'll move on to Gottman.
Sure.
So a little bit about the services that you provide, right, under ServiceNow. What were some of the highly demanding services that you have seen coming to surface during the pandemic, and any difference between the different client segments that you service, the FSI, financial services versus telcos versus the other industries? Has there been a different demand of your type of services since the pandemic?
All right. Thanks, Cheryl. I guess if I were to generalize it, I think hands down, the most demanded software across the industry is probably workflow, right? Workflow automation in general. And if I were to give examples, telco, for example, so we have got a huge telco customers in Malaysia, where they actually employ workflow capability of ServiceNow platform to actually automate some of the workflows behind the scene. And this has become particularly important because of us not being in the same office. So unlike back then when everybody is in the same building, we can actually just go from one cubicle to another cubicle to actually get things done. But now in the digital world, what happened is that things are slightly different now, where, to Noni's point earlier, is actually from bedroom to bedroom instead of from cubicle to cubicle. So we need technology in the service of people to actually make that happen. So that is actually probably one of the more common ones. But during this pandemic especially, I think COVID-related or pandemic-related workflows especially has been booming, right? Zoom, for example. But specific to ServiceNow, we do have a number of applications that we have actually built to actually help customers ease through this particular period of time. One particular example that I can think of off the back of my head is actually Scoot, which is the airlines in Singapore. So they have been a long-time customer of ServiceNow, and they have actually used ServiceNow for a number of workflow processes. But specific to COVID, what they have done is that they actually use the platform to actually help manage 2,000 of their employees around the world, but majority of them are actually in Singapore, right? And when we talk about 2,000 of them are primarily stewardess, pilots, people on the frontliner who are probably very different from the traditional office worker where they have a dedicated cubicle with laptops in front of them. So all the workflows that they have to trigger and initiate has to be done through a mobile device. And when we talk about workflows, we also talk about things like, health declaration. So when they come into the office or, if someone around their neighborhood is actually infected, so they will use the system or their mobile device to actually declare if they're healthy or not healthy. They also have got travel advisory. So as and when Singapore and Malaysia flights, for example, when they resume, so they can actually get updated information as well as the latest corporate guidance, everything on the tip of their finger. So yeah, so those are some of the examples that I could give.
Thank you so much, Gottman, for that detailed explanation. That helps to promote your services to our audience here as well.
Not intended.
I'm sure it's not. Well, and anyway, I think I can't stop to wonder because we are having a live session, live streaming here, but we don't have live audience. The only way I could get a gauge whether we've got we got people listening in is through the questions that are asked. So I encourage the audience behind the screen to post your question. If we can and we have time, we will answer them during the session. If we don't, we'll try our best to come back to you you after the show. So I encourage all of you to ask questions. Otherwise, we will be answering very much questions which we think it's of interest to you. But if you have anything that is bothering you related to this topic of humanizing technology and digital to your organization, please post your question, and we'll be more than happy to take it up throughout our discussion this morning. All right, so maybe I'll just move on back to Alvin. Right, so I think being an MNC, Tesco as we know it, how can Tesco build a universal people culture that can be replicated in every country while integrating with the speed of upgrading technology at the same time? I'm sure that's going to be a very challenging task for you, being the head of people. Maybe you can share with us some of your initiatives or experience.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. I think one of it would be by looking at the core purpose, why the company exists. So in terms of Tesco, is from the UK, so the core purpose doesn't run away, so it's still applied to Malaysia locally as well. The core purpose for Tesco is to serve our customer a little better every day. So that's what we do, and when we embed it through our colleagues across our head office stores and distributions, these are the purpose that why we exist in the company. So when it then align back to the technology changes, so it's all, I would say, jive in all very well. So let me give you an example, like the self-service checkout. So now we have a self-service checkout in most of the stores as well. So for customers who prefer to do a self-service checkout by purchasing a few items, they can just simply go to the self-service checkout and then tag the barcode and then make a payment, and then they can go. Another example would be the Tesco Scan and Shop as well. Pretty new service we implemented slightly before the MCO period as well. For those who customers who wants to do the tagging based on the app, they can just download the app, and then they can just scan the products they purchase, and then when they go through checkout counter, they can just show the list of the item they purchased with the total amount, and then they would make payment almost immediately. So that's some of the example that we try to align back. So in terms of culture perspective, and then to relates back to the store at the frontline colleagues in terms of how they serve our customer better.
Maybe just a quick follow-up question, Alvin. How do you ensure that your people actually practice those culture on the job? I mean, given that you've got maybe lots of stuff that you have at the front line, how do they inculcate and apply those values when they serve their customers?
Well, I would say it's a journey. So whenever you talk about cultures, it's always a journey that each and every organization have to go through, not only Tesco, but other companies as well. So we do have induction program. So they have go through 3 days on the job training. So they have to really understand the process. What is our process across the stores? How do they replenish product? How do they scan the barcode? How do they change prices when there's a promo, so on and so forth? So all this will be trained on the job basis for a few days before we really put them on the real job. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that, Alvin. A little bit of context of how things work in behind the scene in Tesco. It's definitely interesting for a consumer like myself. So maybe I'll move on to Noni. A little bit about UNDP. What were some of the initiatives that you put in place to humanize the workplace or the virtual work environment for the people?
Well, on top of creating, making WhatsApp a business way of communicating, we also gave our staff the opportunity to come and collect their desks, not their desks, their chairs and their workstations, so that they could create an office at home. So it was a way of recognizing that it was a bit difficult to be working from home and doing office work from home. On top of this, I think I've mentioned the virtual tours that we do. the weekly catch-ups, the coffees that we have. In addition to that, what we also do is for our new joinees, we've opened up a site where if you're new, you post pictures about your life so that people can get to know you. Because ordinarily, I mean, we've hired more than 100 people during this period, whom I've never met before. But I get to meet them online because they share about themselves, their lives, and you know, for those who share their numbers, we can reach out to each other. What I really find is that while we don't have the physical connection, I think there is more effort in wanting to reach out to each other. And so we do encourage a lot of reaching out, because the type of work that we do, as you can imagine, we're servicing the whole world from Kuala Lumpur, and sometimes it can be a daunting task because we may not always, you know, understand what is going on the other side of the world. So I think the contacts that we have weekly, the WhatsApp messages that we send to each other, and I think the virtual tours are really doing us a great service. And yeah, so I find that people are more, I think people are happier now at home. I'm not sure about the office anymore, but people are happy now.
All right, that's so great to hear, Noni. What is the one thing that you missed by working virtually?
To be honest with you, I miss a human contact, just to be able to share a joke real time. You know, when it comes to the Zoom and the team and all these virtual spaces, sometimes you just have to be mindful who else is on the call. You know, you don't have the opportunity to say, like, you know, you're walking into a meeting and you can crack a joke and you can just laugh about nothing, you know. That has gone, and I don't know whether we'll ever get to have that. You know, you just see your colleagues from the neck upwards, and you know, it's not personal, but it does seem to be the way of the future. So in a nutshell, I miss the human contact, the physical contact with people.
You're absolutely right, Noni, because I just remembered one of the recent webinar session that I've had, and a colleague of mine said that he bought a shirt and he wanted to wear it for the webinar session because the shirt says, "I'm not wearing any pants." So like you rightly put it, you can see from the neck up, but you really do not know, you don't have that physical interaction, and it just feels different. It's just like our show today. We are in a live studio having this live streaming, but we don't have any audience, so we are talking amongst ourselves. And obviously that is it's equally challenging because we like reactions, right? I mean, every time when you post something on Facebook, you like to see a thumbs up or somebody liking your post. So we like reactions, and we like to, you know, feel acknowledged. So back to that point, I think maybe I'll just pose this question to Kokman. ServiceNow, as an employee, obviously, what sort of, how do you decide what sort of software to implement for your own organization? And how do you decide which ones is the most suited? Because you are a software company, and I'm sure you've got lots of things to offer for your own use. So how do you decide?
Yeah, so first thing first, I think one of the things that we do very well within the company is that we so-called drink our own champagne. So everything that we sell, we actually use that ourselves. As a matter of fact, we are actually customer zero. So we are sort of like the testing ground. If it works well, then we kind of prototype, market it to everybody else, right? I think one of the key driver for us is really starting from experience, right? We wouldn't want to just implement technology for technology's sake. What we want to implement is to implement technology that would actually complement our users' life, right? To make them make their job easier, faster, more effective, more efficient in that way. So that has always been the guiding principle for the organization, and that has actually worked out pretty well for us, to be honest, so far. Very good example of what we've just done, I think was just probably 2 quarters ago during the pandemic, was that being a sales organization, some of you may appreciate that there's a whole lot of paper that's required, going through legal, a lot of reviews. So prior to the pandemic, what happened was there were a lot of, like I said, everybody's in the office, right? So we're just passing paper around, and it's not effective, but it's not that bad, right? Until the pandemic hits, where we say, you know what, I can't ship a document from Malaysia to the UK just for a signature and then comes back. It became then very, very difficult. So what we've done is that we have actually developed our own application to actually support our legal process. So everything goes through the system now, is routed automatically. It's triggered from one single place, but it's actually routed to thousands of people around the world to actually work on. And that has actually kind of garnered tremendous result. So we actually seen, I think, close to about 80% reduction of unnecessary emails. And not only unnecessary emails, but that also equates to much faster turnaround time. So that, to my point earlier, is all about experience, both from how the user is actually using it, as well as the result that they can actually enjoy at the end of the day.
Interesting when you said that you've used your employees as testing grounds, so they are all guinea pigs.
To some
Sorry
extent,
for that
yeah.
language, but yeah, it's interesting that you say that. How is the reaction of the people? I mean, when they are being put through so many technology changes, even in your own organization.
Yeah, I think I could actually tie it back to Alvin's point earlier around culture. The culture of ServiceNow as a company has been kind of embedded the very first day that we joined the company, where we actually, to some extent, not afraid to speak up, right? If a technology is pushed to any one of us and we feel that it's actually not very useful, there are sufficient channels as well as ways for us to provide feedback, or obviously constructive feedback. And we have done that quite a fair bit as well. Not to say that 100% of what everything ServiceNow produce is actually good, useful, and provide great experiences. Unfortunately, it's not that case. There are occasions where we come up with products. Before we go out to market, we actually got internal testings, like myself, provided feedback and feel that, you know what, maybe it's not the right time, maybe it's not the right way of doing stuff. And then we go back and we actually, develop better, we learn from it and we develop better solutions out of it.
Okay, great. So it looks like we do have questions coming in, and I'll be reading off some of the questions that our listeners are interested to maybe get a feedback from. Alvin. Abdul from WebEx, I think, he asked, how has Tesco helped online business owners throughout the pandemic? Any interesting insights here or initiatives?
In terms of helping online business owners per se, I just would like to probably clarify that the online business, the system is owned by Tesco. So when the customer back in orders, then we will then deliver back to the customer. So during the pandemic time, there are few tied up collaborations, but obviously not with the business owners, but with the Grab, and some with the Grab as well. The Grab drivers can help to deliver, and if you can see now, even we have collaboration with Foodpanda as well to do the on the same day delivery if the customers doesn't want to choose the next day delivery within the Tesco online. So the answer is no, we don't tie up with any business owner. So we are brick and mortars companies, and whenever customer purchase, then we will just send and deliver to the back to the customers.
I guess Tesco online store is slightly different from any other shopping online store like your Alibaba or Lazada or even Zalora, right? Because they do have business owners that that sells their product through that channel versus Tesco, you sell your own product. Hence, I guess, rightly said, I guess ultimately is your online store only sells on Tesco's products, and indirectly, I guess the only way to help business owner, if they are Grab drivers or if they can be supporting the value chain. I think that's where indirectly you are able to promote that services. Okay, great. So maybe I'll just move back to our panel before I take the next question from the audience. What conversations have you been having that you weren't having before? Maybe I'll ask Noni this.
Wow, I think it's mainly around work-life balance. Because now, we are all confined to our homes. I'm finding that, the more I speak to my colleagues, everyone is talking about the fact that, when an email arrives in your inbox, because people know you're home, there seems to be this assumption that because you're home, why can't you respond? And so these are the type of discussions we're having in terms of how do we balance this? How do you separate yourself within the same house that now is my break and now is my work? And so we are talking a lot around these, we're having these type of conversations more and more. Whereas before it was like after you leave the office, you've left the office, and whether you work or you don't work, it depends on the type of work that you're doing.
I can totally relate to that, Noni. My boss is still here, but anyway, I like to say this as well. Yeah, I mean, totally agree, because work and life is integrated now. You don't have an excuse to say that I'm driving or I'm traveling from a client A to a client B. You go from meetings to meetings to meetings back to back, because it's all on Teams, right? And you start maybe at 7 o'clock and you finish at I don't know what time. So totally can relate to the example, and this really leads us very well to the next question that we have received from Kenny. What are organizations doing to avoid burnout for your employees, as we all know that people are spending more time at work virtually? Maybe Alvin or Cotman, any reaction to that question for your respective organization? What have been some of the initiatives that you put in place to manage that work-life balance?
Fundamentally, I think it's very important that taking a day off or two would help to improve their well-being. So that's very important. On top of that, we also have a series of activities and programs as well. So one of the things that we've done is to offer the online exercise as well. So whereby there is a series of gym fitness instructors to be there on certain time. So we want to try it out, and we encourage our colleagues to do exercise, and also some newsletter as well to keep healthy. So we also have a newsletter. We roll out newsletter as well on the eating healthily, staying fit, so on and so on, to give what do you call this awareness, to create the awareness for our colleagues to stay healthy. Because for me personally, actually when I work from home for the last few months, actually I grow indirectly, because my wife tend to feed me with all the snacks. After lunch, 2 o'clock I have snacks, I have fruits, and then 4-5 o'clock I get another snacks as well. So yeah, I need to be aware as well. Yeah. Over to you, Cheryl.
Very nice, Alvin. So you grew sideways. Interesting. I like that online classes. I think we should all keep fit while we keep well at home, working from home. Any reaction from Kotman? Anything that's different that you are practicing in service now?
I think primarily it's mostly the same, right? So we have like weekly yoga classes, weekly gym classes. There are occasionally cooking class that is run by our own internal employees. So that is interesting. But one thing I think the company, the organization is trying to achieve is to kind of reduce the amount of time spent on online meetings, right? So what we always encourage the teams to do is to say, for example, you schedule a 1 hour team call, right? So what we want to do is to actually cut short the meeting and be more effective and finish it, wrap it up within 45 minutes. So that you can actually give 15 minutes back to the people to actually maybe even go for a snack, like what Alvin said, right? Go for toilet break, go for a walk. So that is a culture that we're trying to build within the organization after this pandemic has started.
All right, nice. How about Noni? Any difference apart from the nice recipe and the virtual tours?
Well, I think I'm personally pushing more for more efficient meetings. So a meeting cancelled is a win. When I say is a win, is sometimes I think the COVID pandemic created in a lot of meetings, meeting after meeting, and then after a few months, I think everyone began to realize that meetings were now being set up just because. But now I think we're all realizing that meetings are not really required. So I'm pushing for more of resolution and more efficient meetings. Meaning, if you're asking for a meeting, come with your agenda, your problem statement, and what are you proposing, so that if we can save 30 minutes, you know what, we need to celebrate that, so the free 30 minutes. And of course, yes, to add on, we're also encouraging a lot of through our email channels, where we give people tips and tricks of how to exercise during the day, how you just walk around your own apartment, your own house, and get some free time. But it's not been easy. Last but not least, personally, I really push for people to take their annual leave. It's very, 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 very important. You would not be you'd be amazed to see that one day without a Teams or a Zoom back to back, it's just, I don't know, it's bliss. And so the fact that you're at home doesn't mean you can't take a day off. I found that, just to wake up and not be in a team or Zoom meeting in itself is just so, I can't describe the feeling. So encourage more of this. And of course, we do have a policy where if you take on more than so many days into the next year, you lose a certain number of days. And so we're not waiving that policy, meaning that you must take your leave. And so we are really encouraging people to take their leave regardless of what it is. And within the organization, this is my last point, within the organization, we've established a very strong staff welfare where people can reach out to counselors, people can actually get therapy on different situations that have escalated because of the COVID situation. And so, yeah, it hasn't been easy, but we're trying our best as well.
Very nice, very nice. Because like what Alvin rightly put it, right? Time for yourself, time for work. Hopefully we'll be able to split between the two and have a good balance. And now is the best time to take a break because it's year end, it's the new year. So hopefully we'll start the new year fresh. And with that, I think we've got just a couple of minutes left. Maybe I'll just end the session with one last question and open for any one of our panelists to respond to this. So any advice for our audience in terms of upskilling and reskilling the people to be more future-oriented with the skill sets related to data, digital, and disruption? Any particular skill set you think it's key when you talk about embracing the disruption of digital and data?
I'll go for it.
Yes, please.
Right. I think I would relate back to what your boss said earlier, which is around the mindset change. The mindset shift is actually very, very important. There's only so much hard skills, the traditional soft skills like presentation, leadership that you can actually take. But if you don't have the mindset, growth mindset to actually absorb and make those changes internally within yourself, I think that is actually, I think that's just paramount.
Thank you, Eamon. Noni or Alvin, anything else to add?
I think if you look through some of the research papers, right, what are the key skills for the futures? There are lots. Digital skills is one of it, this and that. But at the end of the day, I would say it all bounces back to individual responsibilities. They should take accountability to develop themselves, to have that discussion with their line managers to look at what are the skill sets they need to have for now and the future. So I think that's the key for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Any last words, Nani?
I think the honest truth is that COVID-19 has reset the world forever. We are not going back to what we used to be. And so it's important for all of us to be agile and to realize that wherever we are now is the beginning of a new future. And with that, I think we all just need to keep abreast of the technologies that are coming on board, because we're not going backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Noni. And thank you to all our panelists today, Alvin, Kokman, and Noni. And signing off now, thank you so much for joining us for this live session. Hopefully you get a tip or two from our discussion this morning. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, we hope that you've enjoyed the people track of the industry panel discussion as much as we did. Thank you so much to our panelists and our moderators, Cheryl, Kokmoon, Alvin and Noni, for such a great and insightful discussion. And also thank you for staying with us until the end. As I've mentioned earlier, we're giving away 3 exciting prizes at each of the 8 sessions, and all you need to do is complete a short survey by scanning the QR code that is shown on your screen, or go to bit.ly/dxdsurvey7. Day 4's morning session is now a wrap, but we still have 2 more awesome sessions left at the grand finale later this afternoon. Coming up after the lunch break is the Reach Thematic track that is powered by Kantar. Also joining the session are some of the industry-leading marketing, media, branding, digital, and programmatic subject matter experts and practitioners. They are from Genting Malaysia, MDEC, and Triton Digital. And to learn more about these speakers, as well as the speakers that we've had before and the panelists and the conference program, please scan the QR code on the right of your screen or go to bit.ly/dxdagenda. Please also share the Digital X Data 2020 program with your colleagues and friends, or your bosses. If you need any assistance from us, please email us at events@thestar.com.my. I'm signing out, but this page will remain live in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And remember to complete the short survey to stand a chance to win one of those 3 exciting prizes. Thank you, and see you again at the final session of the conference later this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Bye.
Finding it a hassle to ship your parcel overseas? Wouldn't it be great if you didn't need to travel to the drop-off point or could avoid filling out lengthy consignment notes? With DHL on the go, you can now send parcels or documents easily. Tell us your shipping details and let our chatbot guide you the rest of the way. Make payment through a secure payment gateway. Arrange a pickup at your preferred location. All of this is done via WhatsApp from your home, office, or anywhere, at any time. Scan the QR code or WhatsApp us now. Ready, chat, go! With DHL on the go.